everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Very excited to be with you on this Wednesday. Man, do we have a lot to talk about today. So we got a little sprinkling of NFL news regarding the New York Jets. I'm going to get into it about 12 to 15 minutes. Aaron Rodgers, we now know where he was and what he was doing. He's vacationing in Egypt. I don't know if he was trying to discover the fact that, yes, the pyramids actually do exist, contrary to 80 perceived conspiracy theory. I'm not sure. Discuss that in 12 to 15 minutes. Carving Up the Context revolves around my man Klay Thompson and a pervasive and continuing narrative that, the Golden State Warriors just treated Klay like a dog. Not a dog in like the Pat McAfee sense, but a dog like, man, just disregarded the guy. I'll detail why that is absolutely false and an incorrect narrative, but also part of the reason the Warriors moved on from Klay. They're getting a little better. That in about 30 minutes. The halfway point of the show. Bryson's best 10 NBA players exiting the playoffs. We're not basing this just off the playoffs. We're not going from April to June and ranking the top 10 players from that span. We're talking about in totality, your body of work, especially and combined with what you're doing right now. Your playoffs can either add or subtract to how I view you as a player. That in 45 minutes, Bryson's best 10 at the end of the show. So there was a lot of uproar about the Boston Celtics being put up for sale after this current ownership group has had control of the franchise since 2002. I looked at that. I'm like, yeah, I know exactly why the Boston Celtics are being sold. That at the end of today's show. So a lot to discuss. NBA free agency is dying down a little bit. It wasn't as crazy off the bounce off the walls nuts that we thought it might be. Although DeMar DeRozan's still in the market, we still the Bulls could trade Zach LaVine. Laurie Marketing could end up with the Warriors. Please, Jesus, make that happen. We've got a lot of NBA news still to come. But I don't want to say a big domino, but somewhat not pertaining to this player, but to this team, dropped today. But first, the king, the man, the myth, the legend himself, LeBron James, signed a 2-year, $104 million contract to stay with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the second year of that contract is a player option. So LeBron is going into year 22, is going to play this exactly how he should. He's going to take the rest of his year on a season-by-season basis, which is the absolute smart approach. And we knew the kind of thing that stamped was the fact that the Lakers drafted Bronny James. Once the Lakers took Bronny James, it's like, yeah, LeBron's going back to LA. He's not going to pass up an opportunity to play with his son. He's not going to pass up an opportunity to play with JJ Redick, who we know he has a very tight relationship with. And I think JJ's going to do a pretty solid job. More on that later in this segment. But this contract, in particular, the amount of money, is in the fact LeBron signed the max deal and may have to actually take a little bit less so that the Lakers avoid going into the second apron, which could cause a number of issues. That sound you hear, that thumping sound, you know what that was? That was the Lakers title window slamming shut. It's over. So LeBron James, through Dave McMenamin, who we know he has a very tight relationship. Dave McMenamin's been covering LeBron, I think that since the start of his career, if I'm not mistaken. This guy is as plugged in as it comes to LeBron, to Rich Paul, to Clutch Sports, and he made it apparent that LeBron James entering this offseason said, you know what? I'm a billionaire, for crying out loud. I'm going to take a little bit less so we can bring in another impact player. And the three players mentioned in Dave McMenamin's report were as follows: James Harden, Jonas Valanciunas, Klay Thompson. Now, Harden would have been an awful fit, and I would have clowned the Lakers for making that move. Fortunately for their sake, they did not. He's back with the Clippers, where he belongs. But then it's down to Klay Thompson and Jonas Valanciunas. So somehow, some way, they let Valanciunas walk to the Washington Wizards, who I think are openly tanking. Even if they're not openly tanking, or at least trying to tank, they're bad enough to where they essentially can. They're maybe the worst team in basketball. They let him go there, as opposed to bringing in Jonas Valanciunas. Anthony Davis can now play the 4, which I think is more of his natural position, as opposed to the 5. But Klay Thompson's in the market. More on Klay later in the show and Carving Up the Context. And Rob Pelinka is unable to secure a meeting with Klay. He's a meeting with his agents, one thing. He never secured a meeting with Klay Thompson. And there are a number of factors, a number of reports as to why Klay did not choose the Lakers. Some said, hey, the idea of playing with LeBron James after competing against him for years with Steph and Draymond would have felt somewhat, like, I guess in Klay's mind, somewhat of a betrayal of Steph and Klay. Although I think Draymond would have jumped at the opportunity if the moment called for it. That's beside the point. But a number of factors, Klay didn't go to the Lakers. But the fact of the matter is, while the Dallas Mavericks, while Nico Harrison, while the brass in Dallas was just absolutely putting every possible resource into getting Klay Thompson, Rob Pelinka was unable to secure a meeting with him. Hey, Bryson, well, let's not panic. I mean, those are three impact players. Now, Harden would have been an awful fit, but Klay Thompson would have worked. Jonas Valanciunas would have worked, but not the end of the world for the Lakers, right? Wrong. The Lakers' starting five, when healthy last season, were as follows: D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Rui Hachimura, Anthony Davis. Right now, as we sit here today, the Lakers' starting five is as follows: D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Rui Hachimura, Anthony Davis. It's the same starting five that, while they put up one heck of a fight, got gentlemen swept in round one by a team that went on to immediately lose to a Rudy Gobert playoff team. You say, well, Bryson, new coach. Okay. Any hope the Lakers have at competing for a title this season, I'm talking about this season exclusively, is going to hinge on two things. Because they really haven't made any, I don't think they've signed any free agents at all, actually, as far as guys who weren't originally with the Lakers. Two things are going to have to happen. Both within the realm of possibility, but some I find somewhat unlikely. Number one, JJ Redick is going to have to prove to the NBA world. I love JJ Redick, for the record. Just want to put that out there. But by the end of next season, regardless of what the result of the Lakers season is, if the general NBA public looks at the Lakers, looks at JJ Redick, says, gosh darn it, man, that guy can coach, well, then they must have made someone wrong, because we know it was almost impossible for LA to downgrade from Darvin Ham. I've talked about that. I've waxed poetic about that. My guy Barry Grit Jr. has on his show, on my show, multiple times. We've got a video on my Instagram page, on my Instagram account, and on his as well, that's still generating likes almost 2 months later. Like, Darvin Ham was a terrible coach. Couldn't relate to the locker room, didn't adjust. There was a number of issues. Shams Charania detailed it so eloquently in his piece when Darvin Ham was fired from LA. It did not work. So the Lakers will not downgrade it. JJ Redick will be a better coach than Darvin Ham, but just about every NBA team can say the same thing. Okay? So JJ Redick will have to prove to himself and prove to the NBA world, whew, that guy's legit. Like, there's no doubt about it. Lakers got their dude. No question. And number two, for the Lakers to somehow put themselves in the title contention in a stacked Western Conference, my guy, and it makes me sick he ended up in the purple and gold, Dalton Knecht will have to be in the Rookie of the Year race. I think he's capable of doing that. I do. I think he's a special offensive talent that's going to blossom and develop and get better as time goes on. I think JJ Redick's the perfect coach for Dalton Knecht. But the fact of the matter is, you're going to need him. And what's a weak draft, so it's possible, but you are going to need him by season's end to be a key contributor for your squad. I'm talking like third option to LeBron and AD. And I don't see him doing that. I love Dalton Knecht. I think he's going to have an excellent NBA career. May have all-star potential, but not off the bat immediately. He'll be an impact player, probably not the third option on the offense by the end of year one. The fact of the matter is this, and this is what I have said, I've been consistent on this for many years, is that since LeBron James joined the Los Angeles Lakers in 2018, so he's played 6 years, he's going to play a seventh this year. We don't know what's going to happen this upcoming season, but in the 6 years LeBron has been in LA, his teams, given how the season has played out as it pertains to injuries and roster construction, have been championship contenders no more than twice. Of course, they won the championship 4 years ago back in 2020, and they deserve it. And asterisk, it's the bubble title. Nonsense. Whoever would have won that bubble title would have absolutely deserved it, because those circumstances were not exactly ideal. But then again, neither was the circumstances of the entire world. It was a pandemic, for crying out loud. And the second year, you can argue 2023 when they got to the Western Conference Finals, but they got swept by a team that literally, physically, psychologically, from a game plan perspective, absolutely owns them in the Denver Nuggets, who have won 12 of their last 13 games against Los Angeles. Every other year. LeBron's first year, yes, he got hurt, but that team was not beating Golden State. That was when KD was still with the Warriors. They were not beating Golden State, so they were not a contender in the Western Conference would have been 2019. 2021, by no fault of his own, by fault of almost exclusively Solomon Hill, the Lakers were out of title contention after LeBron got his ankle rolled. The next year, they make the Russ deal, and that season is in the gutter from the jump. They don't even make the playoffs. They sell Russ. They sell the farm basically to acquire extra assets, extra pieces to help them get to the conference finals. And then they make the key cardinal mistake that unless you are a dominant champion, you don't make. Let's run it back. Same group. Let's go. Lakers did that, and you see where it ended up for them. They were the 8th seed in terms of the play-in tournament, won their play-in game, became the 7th seed, and got bounced before it could even get to a game 6. And they're bringing back that exact same starting 5. I may love LeBron James. I think he's the greatest player ever. He's undoubtedly no lower than 2nd. But he's still great. Spoiler alert, he's in my top 10 players that I'm going to reveal in 35 minutes. He's not going to get better as time goes on. Anthony Davis, I feel like this is kind of the peak of where he's going to be at in the next year and a half, 2 years, as he's going to be eventually going to start to decline by the time LeBron's gone. After that, Austin Reeves is a good player. He can defend a little bit. He can shoot, create his own shot to a relatively consistent degree, but then it's Hachimura who will be, and I'm not necessarily faulting JJ Redick for this, but kind of going to be relegated to a spot-up shooter. And then it's D'Angelo Russell, who we know is a 0 in the playoffs. It might as well be a left-handed Jordan Poole. Then you got Jackson Hayes, Dalton Kennett. I love the kid. Let's see what he does in year 1. But you're basically running it back with the same group. And I refuse to believe that in a conference where Anthony Edwards is going to be better, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be better, okay? Nikola Jokic, it's hard to imagine he gets better, but he's not going anywhere, and he's certainly one of the 3 best players in basketball. That 3-headed monster as far as teams out west. The Dallas Mavericks, just went to the NBA Finals and added Klay Thompson and Emmanuel Quickley. That the Lakers a year ago, a coaching change, and they go deep in the playoffs. No, listen, did Darvin Ham help them in that series? No, I think he kind of cost them in that game too. Does the series go 6-7 with JJ Redick? Probably, but do we actually see the Lakers winning a game 7 in Denver? A team that has, again, owned them in every way, shape, and form the last 2.5 seasons. So the idea, again, LeBron staying with the Lakers was great, but it was also inevitable. And the fact that the Lakers were not able to lure in a key cog to a system that is already teetering a little bit speaks to the level of dysfunction and incompetence that the Lakers have in their front office. You can blame Rob Pelinka, and he deserves a ton of blame. Who hired Rob Pelinka? Genie Bus, Rambuses, they going anywhere? Oh, Bob Myers. Yeah, Bob Myers is going to go from the well-oiled operation run by Joe Lacob and Peter Guber with his best friend in the world, Steve Kerr, to LeBron's going to be 40, going on 41 next year. Anthony Davis is not getting younger, and our ancillary pieces are good, not great, and our ownership is an absolute clown show. So this offseason, as if we had to grade teams, obviously the Celtics, it's hard to give them an A+ because they just kept their pieces, but in that regard, you probably do give them an A+, more on the Celtics ownership at the end of the show. You give the Knicks an A for getting Mikal Bridges. You give the Sixers an A for adding Paul George. A lot of teams you can get passing grades, failing grades. Lakers at best have a D+ offseason just because they added Dalton Kennett. Okay, if you want to say JJ Redick, C. At the very best, a C. Because while I think JJ Redick, and I talked about this when he was hired, is going to be an excellent coach, I fear for his sake that when LeBron's gone, when LeBron steps away and retires, Anthony Davis will be 2 years older, 3 years older by that point. the Lakers front office is so inept, impatient, and incompetent that they won't give him an opportunity to rebuild. And they'll be right back in the spot that they were in when the late, great Kobe Bryant retired. And even when Kobe Bryant was at the end of his career, the draft picks were good. They just were unable to develop most of them. And the front office was probably even worse then than it is now. If Jeannie Buss run the operation, if Kurt and Linda Rambis run the operation, the ceiling for the Lakers is 45-6 wins and out in round one. That's a reality. And they kind of have nobody but themselves to blame. And that's the reality for the Los Angeles Lakers today. Look, because again, LeBron making it apparent and putting it out there. I will take a pay cut if we can add somebody. They don't add somebody. He's like, well, screw this. I might as well get the money, right? And again, he'll probably have to take a little bit less than the max because of the fact that the Lakers are really flirting with that second apron. By the way, a team that is dangerously close to that second apron, and this is the team you're going to field. I'm going to talk about the Warriors later, but Joe Lacob talked about, the owner of the Golden State Warriors, talked about this offseason, like the number one goal is to get under the second apron because we cannot field a team that fails to register 50 wins in a stacked West and is the 10 seed and gets blown off the floor in our one and only playing game. That can't be the highest payroll in the NBA. Like, that's not going to cut it. We will pay the money if we get the results. 10 seed and out in the first playing game. That is not going to work. So the Lakers are dangerously close to a very similar situation. Boston Sports Summit. I'm going to talk about your Celtics at the end of the show, Tim. What a year for the Celtics. They went banner number 18 and now get to watch the Lakers run themselves into the ground. Oh, with LeBron. Let me tell you something, Tim. This is absent LeBron. Oh, LeBron took the max. LeBron made it apparent, made it clear. Klay, if you want to come, I'll take a pay cut. Klay just said no. Jonas Valanciunas, you want to come, I'll take a pay cut. Jonas went to the Wizards. That's maybe Jonas is thinking he's going to get traded next season because I have a hard time believing that the Wizards were the best option for a guy who's one of the better offensive rebounders in the game. But or rebounders in general in the game. But and good screen and roll guy too. So again, this is the Lakers' reality though. That as long as Jeannie Buss and the Rambises are in charge, this is what you're going to get. And JJ Redick will not get the opportunity post LeBron, which is coming soon, could be as soon as next year, 2026, will not get the opportunity to show, hey, I can build a culture, I can build a system. He'll be out by then. I mean, not by then, but after year one of that rebuild. So that's the reality of the Los Angeles Lakers. That's why they're stuck today. By the way, Tim, good win for the Red Sox last night against the Marlins. Not that we shouldn't beat the Marlins, but hey, right in the thick of the wild card chase. Catch Boston Sports Summit tonight, by the way, at 7 Eastern. Mike Guido, the great Mike Guido, draft expert Mike Guido, is going to be, and Bi-Coastal Baseball host Mike Guido is going to be joining Tim on today's show. Definitely be sure to check that out. I know I will be. I love both of those guys. Mike, we go back a while, so very excited to catch that. Let's transition now to the NFL, our only NFL topic of the day. So I saw something that made me feel really bad for a certain individual. So Connor Hughes of SNY wrote a piece, was talking about this, whatever the case may be, talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's back from his trip. And we talked about this on the show a couple of weeks ago. He missed mandatory OTA. He was the only quarterback to do so outside of Trevor Lawrence, but the Jaguars had a weird policy where just about all of their veterans and key players didn't have to go teach their own. But as far as that aside, Aaron was the only quarterback not to show up at mandatory minicamp because he had a non-excused absence. It's not a medical emergency, not a family situation, none of that. Robert Saleh said non-excused absence. An unexcused absence, rather. Connor Hughes was talking about this on SNY that I think was kind of disgusting. Disgusting might be a bit harsh, but certainly unfair. This is what he said about Aaron Rodgers coming back from his trip that is now reported everywhere was in Egypt. Hysteria over Rodgers' whereabouts emerged largely because of the way the absence was announced. While they were aware of Rodgers' trip and understanding of why it was important to him, their public stance on the matter gave the impression they were not and discounted Rodgers' near perfect attendance. This is hilarious. Throughout the voluntary portion of the off-season program. Because of the, end quote, by the way. So, because of the way it was announced. Who's that pointing the finger at, ladies and gentlemen? Robert Saleh. Now, I want to be on the record. I don't think Robert Saleh is that great of a coach. I think he's a heck of a defensive coordinator. We saw what he did in San Francisco. You could say he had the talent there, but he's done a good job as a defensive coach with the Jets. And a solid defender could say, come on, Bryce, he's had like the worst quarterback play in the league. Fair enough. But we've seen with the Jets certainly the last 2 years, if you want to go back to even the first year that he was there in 2021, the Jets in December, January, games that really matter, have been I think the worst team in football in the last 3 years in December, January in terms of win-loss record. So they've been bad. So I think Robert Saleh is exactly Bill Parcells, but this is entirely unfair to him. And it's indicative to me of a serious power struggle going on with the New York Jets between Rodgers and Saleh. Because I'm not certain that Woody Johnson, that any of the higher-ups with the Jets, Joe Douglas, the general manager, gave Robert Saleh the thumbs up to announce to the media a couple weeks ago, Rodgers, gone, unexcused absence, not here at mandatory minicamp. I'm not entirely certain that was ownership's like, yep, go ahead and make that call. My guess is that Robert Saleh's like, okay, I'm in a situation where my record is well below 500 after 3 years as the head coach of the Jets. I'm kind of clinging to my head coaching duties for my life. And the most important player on my team's not here for mandatory minicamps. Like, you got to be kidding me. The same guy, we don't have the soundbite today, but we've played it ad nauseum. Aaron Rodgers, smug and typical Aaron Rodgers as we've grown accustomed to at his end-of-season press conference back in January. You know, the commitment to winning can't just be a sometimes thing. Can't be a most of the time thing. It's got to be an every time thing. And all the BS that has nothing to do with winning has got to get out of the building. To which I said it's ironic that Aaron Rodgers was out of the building because nothing gets a trip to Egypt, but there is something that gets a trip to Egypt during mandatory minicamp. And it goes back to, again, is Aaron Rodgers the sole source of the Jets' problems? Of course not. They've been dysfunctional for decades prior to Aaron Rodgers. Like, this is Aaron's, call it unusual approach to off seasons and to football, which is he's entitled to his whatever he wants to do. It's his right to do whatever he wants, but not necessarily at the expense of the football team, the organization. This is just the cherry on top. But this is, to me, though, again, Jets players can, I'm not going to say lie because that's going to sound kind of mean because this situation is not their fault. They showed up, they put in the work, they did their job. But the Sauce Gardners of the world, the Garrett Wilsons of the world, the Tyron Smiths and the Mike Williams of the world who are like, oh my gosh, okay, we're here for training camp. Our most important player on our team, probably the best player on our team is not here, and we have to cover for him. I have a very hard time believing that organization and the players in particular, certainly the coach, we heard what the coach said, is, no big deal, no problem. It's called good old-fashioned projecting. That's why, and Kyrie Irving, I have done nothing but give him kudos for the job he has done, not just to repair his public image, but the maturity he's undergone in the last 5 years. I think it's very evident. But the Boston thing was still clearly, and it's okay, I understand it, but the Boston thing was still clearly in his head. And when he said, I think it was after game one, man, I thought it'd be louder tonight. It's like, Kyrie, I love you, but you're projecting. Jets players are projecting. You mean to tell me that when Robert Saleh goes to team, or he doesn't have to go to team, it's evident. They don't see number 8 out there. It's weird not to call Aaron number 12, but he wears number 8 now with the Jets. Tyrod Taylor, his backup, goes into that day, and the first day of mandatory minicamp, has no idea that, I'm going to be running the first team reps here. I'm going to be going against the first team defense, or the scout team defense, rather. If that's indeed how mandatory minicamps work, if it's like practice during the season. I'm going to be throwing to Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams and handing off to Breece Hall, and Tyron Smith's going to be blocking on the left side. Not Aaron. I don't think Tyrod Taylor necessarily knew that coming into mandatory minicamp. And again, it goes back to something that I said about Aaron when all of this was going on. That whether it was perceived or not perceived, it was alluded to by Albert Breer and others that this was an ayahuasca trip. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I have no idea. Frankly, I don't particularly care. Aaron is well within his right to do whatever he wants in the offseason. It's his own time. Now, mandatory minicamp is in his own time, but you know what? He's Aaron freaking Rodgers. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's a 4-time league MVP, second all time, only to Peyton Manning. If he wants to skip mandatory minicamp, so be it. Just don't lecture us. Forget us. Don't lecture your teammates. Don't lecture your coach who's coaching for his job right now. Don't lecture your GM. Hey, the winning. Yeah, I know what it takes to win at the highest level. And yeah, you gotta get all that other stuff that has nothing to do with winning. You gotta get that stuff out of the building. It is the arrogance. It is I'm gonna say it, narcissism of a guy. I've said it. We all know that one person in our lives. Could be a man, could be a woman. We all know that person who thinks they are the smartest human being on the face of God's green earth. And boy, do they like to tell you. Do they like to, they have the cutting edge information on the latest happenings. They know what's going on in sports and the government and how the world works and they know everything, man. And in general, they sound like an idiot. Like we know that person, and that's Aaron Rodgers. And listen, it's like the old saying goes: the Jets made their bed; they're gonna have to lie in it now. I don't necessarily fault them for going after Aaron Rodgers. Now, I would have went after Lamar Jackson, but that's another conversation for another day. It's the fact that now they're in a position that the Jets, they're not the Ravens. So if this was happening in Baltimore, first of all, I don't think Aaron would have ended up in Baltimore if they had a quarterback situation, or Pittsburgh, or any half decent to great, well-run franchise. Is they have to cover for him now. The Jets do. And it's going to be an interesting season. The one thing I give Aaron Rodgers, and the thing that I am eternally grateful to him for, is that, man, he gives me a lot of content on this show. Any content creators, print, behind a microphone, whatever the case may be, hey, you can always count on Aaron Rodgers to give you some big time stories. So it's I feel bad for Robert Saleh. Again, I don't think he's a good coach, but again, to go back to what Connor Hughes brought up on SNY, hysteria over Rodgers' whereabouts emerged largely because of the way the absence was announced, which is a clear and direct shot at Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh did not ask for this. The Jets players didn't ask for it, but Joe Douglas, Woody Johnson, they kind of did because they signed him. Could have just drafted a quarterback. Now, I get it. I've said for years the Jets is the franchise where all young quarterbacks' dreams go to die, but it's going to be an interesting season for the Jets. Man, I hope Aaron's healthy. For a sake, you don't ever want to see any athletes get hurt, but also for the sake, good Lord, the segments I'm going to do this upcoming football season, can't wait. Can't wait. Listen, man, by season 10, RFK Jr. might be calling plays on the sideline in January. You never know. This is the Jets we're talking about. It's well within the realm of possibility. Who knows? All right. So this is going to be this next segment I'm going to do. It may cost me real estate in some regard in the Bay Area and among Dub Nation. If it does, whatever, it does. But there's a narrative going around about Klay Thompson and the Warriors' handling of his free agency that I find wildly inaccurate. And I wanted to discuss that. The piece was written this morning, or at least put out this morning, by the great Ramona Shelburne and almost Malik Andrews, her sister, Kendra Andrews, who covers the Warriors, and obviously Ramona Shelburne's covered the NBA for quite some time. They wrote a really fascinating piece today on Klay and on sort of the build-up to him eventually leaving the Warriors for the Dallas Mavericks on Monday. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. Primetime Deion Sanders says, give me my theme music. On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, we're going to talk about Klay Thompson, the Warriors' handling of his contract situation. So I kind of want to first start by going into this article that was written by Ramona Shelburne and by Kendra Andrews. And it talks about, the article starts talking about how Joe Lacob this offseason took Klay Thompson golfing at a very well-known golf course. It's called the Riviera Country Club in California, in Los Angeles. It's where the wealthiest of the wealthy, the Hollywood elites, if you will, often play golf. So Joe Lacob, very wealthy man, owns the second most valuable sports franchise on planet Earth, the Golden State Warriors, took Klay Thompson golfing. And it appears, as this article details, one of the things the article details, among other things that we're going to get into, is that this wasn't necessarily let's make one last push to try and convince Klay to stay. It was kind of listen, man, there's been maybe a little bit of bad blood. Let's calm it down. Let's go out on good terms before you join your new team this offseason. We wish you the very best. Which, to Joe Lacob, kudos. I think he handled that well in that regard. But it talks about this article that I find really interesting because Draymond Green touched on it on his podcast last night in what was, I think, one of Draymond's more compelling pods. I highly recommend everybody listen to it to kind of get the inside scoop from Draymond's perspective on Klay's departure and what Draymond Green himself, a free agent a year ago, almost did, which ties into this article. According to Ramona Shelburne and to Kendra Andrews in this piece, it talked about how after the 2022 NBA title, the Golden State Warriors won 2 years ago, the two of the Warriors' core three that built this dynasty from the ground up, Steph, Klay, Draymond. Obviously, Steph, we know, is the face of the franchise. He will make it a lifetime contract for the Warriors someday. He's that important, of course. That Draymond Green, a 2023 free agent, and Klay Thompson, a 2024 free agent, were, let's call it, annoyed, according to Kendra and to Ramona. As this piece details, the Warriors prioritize extending Jordan Poole, for 4 years, $140 million, and Andrew Wiggins, 4 years, $109 million, over Thompson and Green the summer after they won a championship, which didn't sit well with either of the two veterans. Now, Draymond went on his podcast and talked about, I was going to sign with the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, as a Warriors fan and as a guy who truly, and I mean truly, detests the Memphis Grizzlies, I did not have to know that from Draymond Green, who's my guy. That's well documented. But Draymond nearly left. Warriors kept him. Well, then Bryson, why did they not keep Klay Thompson? Because he was not contributing to winning anymore. Draymond does. We could show you the stats here. I put this up on Monday. We had a lot of Wi-Fi issues, so we'll put up the stat again. All stats provided by our friends at Stat News. All graphics provided by my man Alfred Parsard Jr. Golden State Warriors since their championship winning season. So since 2021-22, which is the year they won the title, to now, they've won 146 games. They lost 103 games. That adds up to about a 58% winning percentage. When the core three, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, play all together on the floor, in that span, the Warriors are 56-42. That's a 57% winning percentage. Here's where it gets a little uncomfortable. When Steph and Draymond play, and Klay Thompson does not, the Golden State Warriors are 35-8. That's 81% of their games. Well, Bryson, come on, man. Loyalty. I talk about all the time on this show, and I believe it to my very core. And I talked about when the Celtics won the NBA title that they deserve massive credit on. That despite calls to split up Tatum and Brown, to Jaylen Brown in particular, trade Jaylen Brown, try and build something different around Tatum. The Boston Celtics stuck to their guns, and they built a championship contender around those two guys. They were loyal to the right things. They were loyal to what could help them right now and in the future. And as this article talks about, this has been brewing for some time. This was not an issue that, at least from what I was aware of, where Klay was frustrated going back to last offseason, 2023. No, sir. This goes back to 2022. The Warriors, and this talks about how they tried to put the roster together and whatnot. This is really interesting to me. According to Ramona, according to Kendra, that when the Golden State Warriors, do we have this right here? Okay. When the Golden State Warriors were in a position to potentially reconstruct the roster a year ago, Steve Kerr vouched for the group, and in essence vouched for the group, and others vouched for the group and said, hey, let's keep it together. Let's give it one more try. And so the Warriors, who could have gone after LeBron James and did try and go after LeBron James, as this article talks about. They did try and go after Mikal Bridges, and they very much over the weekend tried to go after Paul George, and right now they're in the process of trying to get Lauri Markkanen. They tried to make those moves. It didn't go through. But they said, you know what, Steph, Klay, Draymond, we're going to give you one more shot together. And by injuries to some of the key players, in particular the suspensions to Draymond Green, the Warriors were the 10 seed in the West and got blown off the floor in Sacramento in the play-in game. Joe Lacob is not going to flirt with going into the second apron for that. And so, as uncomfortable as this is, and we can actually, let's go back to Klay, though. Let's go back to Klay. Because the idea, and I've heard this from former players, Kendrick Perkins, Richard Jefferson, I think, does a great job for ESPN. I love RJ, who was teammates with Klay at one point, early in Klay's career. Talk about, man, the Golden State Warriors, I'll tell you what, they have done Klay Thompson dirty. This is they were not loyal to one of the guys who built their dynasty. Yeah, they were. And it's inarguable. In 2015, when Klay was still at the peak of his powers, the Golden State Warriors gave him a 4-year, $68 million contract extension to stay with the team till 2019. So they were able to keep Klay Thompson, gave him $68 million. All of it well-deserved, by the way. In 2019, following Klay Thompson, who was brilliant in Game 6 against the Toronto Raptors, had a great finals in general, but that Game 6 before he tore his ACL, guy was splashing them everywhere, man. That offseason, the Golden State Warriors gave Klay Thompson, and I quote, a 5-year, $191 million contract when Klay Thompson had a torn ACL. By no fault of his own, because the ACL tear, where he missed the first year of that 5-year, $191 million contract, the following offseason, again, by no fault of his own, he blows his Achilles. He then misses the second year of that 5-year contract and about 3 months of the third year of that 5-year contract. So the Warriors paid Klay Thompson in excess of $70 million while he was hurt. They were loyal to him. Now, I'm not saying that Klay should have taken a pay cut for Golden State. Listen, this is the last big contract Klay's going to get. He should try and get every penny they can and try to maximize his abilities on a team he feels can contend for a championship and get him his 5th ring. I defend that, I get that, and I back that from Klay Thompson. I simultaneously, and if you check my record and check about a year ago, I've been alluding to the Warriors moving on for Klay Thompson for a while. Because while Klay's great, undeniably great, one of the things Klay has become known for is great Game 6s, great elimination games. And from 2015 to 2019, Klay averaged about 26 points per game on insane efficiency from the field and from three-point range. Klay Thompson, since that point, by no fault of his own, the 2 devastating, catastrophic injuries back-to-back, averages 8 points per game on 20% shooting from the field in elimination games. The idea that the Golden State Warriors should prioritize loyalty to a legend who's no longer great, effective, yes, great, no, at the expense of wasting the rest of Steph Curry's prime is organizational malpractice. Nobody's going to go to the Warriors I tell you, they have been so disloyal to Klay Thompson. Nobody's going to come there. Interesting. Anthony Melton, he signed there for $11 million. And Kyle Anderson signed there for 3 years, $27 million. They just acquired last night Buddy Hield, one of the 5 best shooters in basketball. The Warriors acquired him, or in the process of acquiring him in a sign-and trade from the Philadelphia 76ers to team up with Steph Curry. Sort of a newer, so it's not the old Splash Brothers. Nothing will ever match the old Splash Brothers, but sort of a newer Splash cousins, if you will, Steph and Buddy Hield. Oh, and by the way, they're in the process, potentially crossing fingers, of getting Lauri Markkanen, who says, hey, reportedly, according to sources in the Bay Area, I'll take a pay cut. I'll take a pay cut to join the Warriors. The Warriors did not do Klay Thompson dirty. And do I understand him being in his feelings a little bit about how this has all transpired over the course of the last 2 years, going back to after that 22 championship? Do I get that? 1,000%. I absolutely get it from Klay's perspective. And I also get it from the Warriors' perspective. And the fact of the matter is this. Steph Curry's 36 years old. In March of next season, he's going to be 37. I think Steph can have, I've talked about Steph, I think could be the Tom Brady of the NBA, that he is still at, I think he could be 43 years old and still be an effective, important, like maybe third best player on a championship contender, if hopefully maybe with the Warriors or with somebody else later in his career, if he wants to, because of the way he takes care of his body, the way he plays the game, which is going to age very well. Shooters last forever. Vince Carter, maybe the greatest in-game dunker ever, turned into a spot-up shooter, ended up playing into his 40s. Like, that's the way Steph plays. He'll last a while. But at this peak of Steph's career, at this level of his career, he's only got at least about 2 or 3 years left. You have an obligation as an organization in the Golden State Warriors to maximize every drop of that juice that you can get out of it. You do not sign Klay Thompson to whatever it would have been. It's been reported, I think Tim Kawakami and others in the Bay Area have reported 2 years, $48 million for Klay. That would have been a mistake. It'd have been great for Klay. It would have been a disaster for the Golden State Warriors. They are in the business of ensuring they get the absolute most out of Steph because they owe it to Steph. If Steph is in positions of power, and reportedly Klay told Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and Draymond basically confirmed it in his podcast last night, hey, don't interfere with contract negotiations. Don't exert your power to try and bring me back. I only want to come back if they want me back. Which kudos to Klay, included kudos to Steph and Draymond for that little agreement there. If Klay does not help the Warriors right now, and there are pieces out there that want to come and can, you go that route. It's uncomfortable. It sucks that it had to end this way. And for the record, I highly recommend that folks out there read this article by Ramona and by Ramona Shelburne, Kendra Andrews, who did a great job sort of talking about this 2-year process in Golden State and how it's gotten to where it is now. But the fact is this, that it's as important and critical as Klay Thompson has been to the Warriors. Their loyalty, first and foremost, has to be to Steph Curry. When Steph Curry became a Golden State Warrior in 2009, and I get the economy was different, inflation, I understand that, but the franchise was worth $370 million. 15 years later, they're worth $8 billion. That's Steph. With the help of Klay, with the help of Draymond, KD for a short spurt there for 3 years. Steph is still amazing. You have an obligation to put at least, if not even a championship contending team, if that's not possible, a competitive team, a team that won't be the 10 seed a year from now. And the Warriors look to be doing that right now. I still think they need to add a star. Markkanen, they're reportedly going after hard with the Jazz. They add him. I'm not saying they're title contenders, but they're going to be better than they were a year ago with Klay Thompson. Or without Klay this year than they were with him a year ago. It's uncomfortable. It sucks that this incredible Splash Brothers partnership where Steph paid tribute to him on Instagram yesterday, had to end like this. But if it meant the Warriors could get a little bit more out of this generational, contrary to what Gilbert Arenas says, this generational player that you have who has changed everything from the top on down about your franchise, your loyalty is to him first. If you can keep Klay, keep him, but not at the expense of winning. And the Warriors did the right thing and understood the big picture and what their primary objective and goal is this offseason. Priority number one, give Steph Curry a shot to contend. For carving up the context, hate that it had to end this way. But it had to end this way with Klay Thompson and the Golden State Warriors. Let's see, Jeff, my guy Jeff. And I think Jeff is from the Bay Area, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to, misquote that because I've seen Jeff is a big 49ers fan. But he says, Bryson agreed. The Warriors need to do everything they can to try and squeeze out another championship with Curry. Kyle Anderson is a good pickup, and I absolutely love Lowry. He would make y'all a top duo. He says y'all, so I guess he's not a Warriors fan. But he says, Lowry is honestly one of my favorite players. Great shooter, big man, a lot of potential. Oh, you bet. You bet. And again, I don't want to overrate Lowry into being this top 10 guy in the NBA. But for what it's worth, 2 seasons ago, all-star. This past season averaged 23 a game, 48% shooting, and the Warriors need a big anyway, so they can fill 2 needs with the same guy. I mean, this isn't exactly Kevin Durant joining in 2016. Obviously, I don't think anything will ever top that, but they're in a good position to get him. And again, if the Warriors, with the acquisitions, DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, if the Golden State Warriors are in a position where they can acquire Lauri Markkanen and not have to give up Jonathan Kuminga, oh, heavens above, we're back. That's all I'm going to say. If the Warriors don't have to give up Jonathan Kuminga in order to get Lauri Markkanen, I'm just telling you right now. I'm just telling you right now. There you go. Oh, yeah, Jeff says, okay, yeah, not from the Bay Area, but been around Santa Clara and San Francisco. Love the 49ers. Not a Warriors fan, but I love Curry and respect them. Yeah, listen, listen, he's one of the easiest athletes in any sport, in any field to root for, and there's no question about that. If y'all get Lauri, is that a top 6 duo in the league, Curry and Lauri? Well, let's add. Let me check. Let's see. I need to look at all the teams to kind of a clear picture of that. So that's a good question. So Tatum and Brown is better. Tatum and Brown would be better. I would not put Brunson and Bridges because I think Steph's better than Brunson and Mikal, Lowry. They're very different players, hard to judge, but Lowry has been an all-star. Give a slight edge to Lowry. But the Knicks, I think, are a better team right now than Golden State. Giannis, Dame, as great as they are, do not fit. My guy Barry Grant Jr. is the first on that. He talked to me on the phone about that a while ago, and after watching, I'm like, oh, yeah, Barry's got a point. Cleveland, Orlando, Indiana. Halliburton, Siakam's pretty good. Embiid, again, if you want to say trio, whether it's Embiid, Maxey, or Embiid and Paul George, whatever the case may be, I say Philly's better. Look down the list. Nobody else in the Eastern Conference. Okay, Shea, Jalen Williams. If Jalen Williams becomes an all-star this year, which I think is well within the realm of possibility, then I probably could put OKC because I think Shea, spoiler alert for what I'm about to do with Bryce's best 10. I do think Jalen Williams not going to be in it. Shea is in it, and he's special. He's ascending while Steph is probably not going to get better than where he is now just from an overall ability standpoint, just because he's 36 years old. Clippers note, Denver, Jamal Murray, Jokic, I'm putting above them. So that's, if I listed 3, that's 3. Minnesota, Ant and Cat. Wow, that's hard. Luka, Kyrie, yes. So that's 4. AD, LeBron, that's 5. AD and LeBron are better, a better duo. Katie and Book are, Katie's not as good as Steph, but Booker's obviously better than Lauri, but they don't fit very well together. So I'd say Steph and Lauri I'd put over Katie and Book. So I would say, yeah, again, the Minnesota thing, man, it's hard because, gosh, I don't trust Cat in the playoffs. And I know, listen, Ant's that dude. I'm not worried about him. It's Cat who had a rough playoff run and has struggled. It's not like D'Angelo Russell bad, but Cat has struggled at times. The postseason becomes a little over-reliant on his jumper, particularly from 3-point range. So I would say yes. Put up your comment, Jeff. If y'all get Lauri as a top 6 duo in the league, I say yes, it is. The only ones I put above it, Tatum and Brown. Again, any combination, Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, or Joel Embiid, Paul George, whatever, both of those are better, or either of those are better. So that's 2. And then you go down to Denver's duo is better, Dallas's duo is better, and the Lakers duo is better. So that would put Golden State at 6. So I do agree. Jeff. Jalen Williams not in the level of Lauri. He's overrated. Interesting. I don't think Jalen's overrated. I think he's capable of ascending into an all-star caliber player. He's a good sort of driver to the basket. My cat was just looking at me just now through the door. Shout out to Neeland. I give Neeland a shout out every show. So shout out to him. He says he has him right at 6. Okay. That's where I've got him. So that's a good question though, Jeff. I appreciate that. Okay. Sticking to the NBA. Now this is something I do every year with the NBA as far as players and the NFL as far as quarterbacks. Rank them before the playoffs, rank them after the playoffs, because it's almost a 100% hit rate that the list is going to look different after the postseason. Now, you don't want to overcorrect because of the playoffs, because often, as I say, we often judge a great movie by like the last 15 to 20 or, worst case 30 minutes of that movie, because it's recency bias. It's the last thing we saw. So we haven't seen Steph Curry play basketball in 3 months. We haven't seen LeBron play in a little less than that span. Kevin Durant, same thing. So there's guys, again, Shea got knocked out in round 2. A lot of guys in this list who didn't necessarily have deep. Joel Embiid got knocked out in round 1. Spoiler, he's on this list. Excuse me. But guys who maybe didn't necessarily have deep playoff runs, but we haven't seen play basketball in a while. We have to contextualize who they are now, what their track record is, what they did in the postseason if they were in it. So if I can get the background music going on right now, if we can get that going so I can do Bryce's best 10 players currently in the NBA. Let's get the background music. NBA currently, it is, and I never thought he'd fall like this after he's been right in my top 5 or not that much lower for some time. 10th best player in the NBA, reveal him. Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is the 10th best player in the National Basketball Association, and here's why. So KD's career is almost unimpeachable. You could say he's never led a team that wasn't ready made to a championship. I understand that. Other than that, it's unimpeachable. He's a 4-time scoring champion. He's a league MVP. He's a 2-time finals MVP. He is, in my mind, not the best scorer ever, but I think the most gifted scorer ever. Just as effortlessly, he can get to any spot on the floor. He can score however he wants, whenever he wants. From 3, from the mid-range, driving the basket. He's efficient. I mean, last season, he did average 26, 6, and 5 on 52% shooting and 41% from 3, 85 from the line. Those are incredibly efficient shooting splits to average 27 a game. Most of the problem with Phoenix was a year ago is the fact I don't think they were a very well-constructed roster, and I said that the second they made the Bradley Beal trade about 12 months ago. That said, as great as Kevin Durant is, and he is too great. Even now, going into what's going to be year 18, it's hard to believe, for Kevin Durant. He's been swept out of the first round in the last 3 years. That's got to count for something. That's why I say, as far as making these lists, who you are now, what your track record is, and what I saw most recently from you in the postseason. And that's KD's track record. 2 sweeps out of the first round in the last 3 years. Not all his fault. I get it. A poorly constructed roster in Brooklyn, and even worsely constructed roster in Phoenix. But could you get one? If you're going to lose in the first round, could you get me 1, 2? I mean, crap, the Bucks got 2 without Giannis against the Pacers this year. Like, you got to give me something. So Kevin Durant, great as he is, the 10th best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 9 is the Ant-Man. It is Anthony Edwards, the 9th best player in the NBA, and here's why. So Anthony Edwards was second-team All-NBA, average of about 26 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shot 46% from the field, which is really impressive for a player that is as high-flying as he is. Again, he is a guard for what it's worth. So this is a dude who I have been very hesitant to deem a superstar to buy all the way in on as it pertains to can he lead this team deep the playoffs? Well, prove me wrong. He did. He got his team despite the limitations of Rudy Gobert, the inconsistency of Karl Anthony Towns, and an injured coach in Chris Finch, who poor guy ended up getting hurt in the Phoenix series and was sitting behind the bench the rest of the playoffs. But getting that team to the conference finals, doing so in the second round, if he didn't outplay Jokic, and I don't think he did, he certainly played Jokic to a draw over the course of that 7-game series because he outplayed Nikola in the first 2 games. In Game 6 and Game 7 is debatable. Jokic's numbers were great, but Anthony Edwards made all the big-time plays down the stretch. Now, Ant's, I think, biggest, if you want to call it a flaw, is the fact that once he got deep in the playoffs, he started to look more gassed, more tired. Ant's a freak athlete, but conditioning is going to have to become a focal point of his offseason approach for years to come in order to have himself and the Timberwolves in position to go deep in the playoffs. But listen, anybody who goes in their first deep playoff run, that's the first thing. Great players, and Ant is obviously that 9th best player in the league, is going to eventually make that adjustment, be ready to go, and put himself in position to be able to go deep in the playoffs and maintain that same level of physical, being good physical shape. And so Anthony Edwards, deep playoff run, very impressive playoff run, all-NBA guy, the 9th best player in the NBA. At number 8, a guy who I've really liked for a while and is coming, I'm telling you, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the 8th best player in the NBA, and here's why. So SGA, many could argue, should have been MVP a year ago. He's first team All-NBA, was 3rd in the NBA in scoring at 30 points per game, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 50 as a guard, 53% from the field, was one of the finals, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, for Clutch Player of the Year behind DeMar DeRozan and Steph Curry. So this is a dude who's efficient, who is a solid defender, could improve a little bit on that side of the floor, but efficient, gets his own spots. He's a mid-range assassin, can get to the basket. The only flaw I would say is in his game, and what's crazy about SGA is we think about him and the Thunder as this crazy young team, and they are. SGA's older than Luka. Like, for context, that's kind of hard to believe, but that's the case. So I think OKC has had about as great of an offseason as any team in basketball, and to me right now, they're my favorites to come out of the Western Conference next season. I love where the Oklahoma City Thunder are going. I just don't want, for Shai's sake and for the Thunder's sake, if they want to go deep in the playoffs or deeper in the playoffs, is for them to be an SGA-reliant basketball team in the same sense that Luka and the Mavs have become when they don't have to be. They've got depth, they've got talent, they've got an excellent coach in Mark Dagnall. But if they can adjust their game, adjust their offensive philosophy, particularly in the postseason, in a major way, not in a major way, but tweak it a little bit to be more of a team-oriented style of basketball with SGA as the focal point of it, hey, watch out for the Oklahoma City Thunder. SGA had a breakout season, was phenomenal. Many could have argued he was MVP of the league last season. You could certainly make that case. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the 8th best player in the NBA. To number 7, a guy who I have been critical of, but I cannot deny his greatness. He's a great basketball player. Put him up there right now. It is Joel Embiid. Joel the Process Embiid, if you want to call him that. Philadelphia 76ers fans have dubbed him that for some time. Joel Embiid, the 7th best player in the National Basketball Association. Here's why. So, in the limited time he was out there, Joel Embiid this past season only playing 39 games because of a knee injury he suffered in January. In that span, he averaged 34 and 11 and was shot 52.9% from the field. Embiid was en route to winning a second straight MVP last regular season before the injury occurred against my Warriors back in January. But Embiid is not higher on this list for the simple fact, because again, your playoff record has to matter at some point, because as great as Joel Embiid is, MVP, 2-time scoring champion, first team All-NBA guy, only MVP in NBA history to never one time in his career appear in the conference finals. We've seen MVPs, Steve Nash, Nikola Jokic up until last year had never been in the NBA finals. We've seen guys win MVPs, a select few, and never go to the finals in their career. Never in the history of the NBA has an MVP not gotten to the conference finals except for Joel Embiid. He's great. He is an offensive cheat code with anywhere on the floor, but particularly from 3 and within 5 feet of the basket. He's unstoppable at 7 feet 2 inches tall, double machine, but I've got to see more. Well, he's hurt, Bryson. Well, that's all I have to judge him on is the postseason when he's hurt. If he comes in healthy, certainly even less excuses for him at that point. But he's got Paul George, got Tyrese Maxey, got a great coach and a great roster around him. Got to at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals this season. I believe he can. I believe he's that type of caliber player, but he's just got to be able to step it up when the Sixers need him most. Joel Embiid, an offensive monster, the 7th best player in the National Basketball Association. The king has gone nowhere. At number 6, it is the king, LeBron James. LeBron James, as that kid in the meme said, is the 6th best player in the National Basketball Association. And here's why. So LeBron, it's insane. It is, this guy was literally built in a laboratory. Year 21, oldest player in the league, 39 years of age. Oh, all he did was average 29, 8, and 7 on 54% for the field and had his best three-point shooting year of his career, 41% from three. Actually, by LeBron standards, not bad for his standards. From the free throw line at 75%. This guy is not the defensive player he used to be, not quite the offensive, well, he's still really good offensively, but not quite, doesn't have the impact on the game now that he did 4 years ago. But I would kind of expect that if you're in year 21. The fact of the matter is, you talk about LeBron, you talk about a 25, 8, and 7 stat line, particularly on the efficiency. That's a stat line that's only replicated by dudes like Luka, like Giannis, Jokic. I mean, that's about where it ends. Like, flirting with the triple-double average on 50 from the field, 40 from 3 is insane. I think we got to put that in perspective, put that into context. Listen, he's not the greatest player in the world anymore. Hasn't been for some time now. This dude's a freak. The league's going to miss him when he's gone. LeBron James, 6th best player. LeBron James, 6th best player in the National Basketball Association. You Celtics fans are going to like this. I give it up. This is my guy. I didn't love his finals performance, but as I went down the list, give credit where it's due. 5th best player in the NBA. You can guess it right now. Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is the 5th best player in the National Basketball Association. And here is why. So Jason Tatum, back-to-back-to-back, first-team All-NBA guy. That's notable. This is a dude who was, again, a multi-time All-Star, led the Celtics in points, rebounds, and assists throughout their playoff run. I'm almost certain that continued throughout the finals. I know for a fact that was the stat coming into the NBA Finals. This is a dude who, listen, for his flaws in terms of shooting from the field in the NBA Finals 2 years ago and this year, he gets other guys involved. He's active on the glass, and he's a really, really good defensive player when he puts a considerable, if I could say that word, amount of effort on that side of the floor. This is a guy who averaged about 27 points per game, 80 rebounds, 5 assists on 47% from the field. Again, his shot selection, I think, does need to improve to a certain degree, particularly in the playoff runs. But this is a guy who I've defended ad nauseum when it comes to back against the wall, one of the best players in the NBA. You talk about Game 6 against Milwaukee 2 years ago, down 3-2 in the defending champ's house at that point, drops 46. The Celtics go on to win Game 7. He drops 30-plus in Game 7 on the road against the Heat in that year's Eastern Conference Finals. He goes berserk, I think, for like 14, 15 points or something in Game 6 against the Sixers, down 3-2 on the road in the second round of last year's playoffs. He then proceeds to go for an NBA Game 7 record, 51 points, to eliminate Philadelphia. Okay, so this is a guy, again, back against the wall. He's one of the best in the NBA in that regard. The only knock on him to me, because if you're waiting for him to win an MVP, if that's the knock, I don't necessarily, Luka doesn't have an MVP. Okay, we've seen a lot of guys who, KD only has one MVP. LeBron hasn't won an MVP in 11 years, which is a crime, by the way. But I don't think that should necessarily be like the barometer, unless you're assuming Jason Tatum can ascend to being the best player in basketball, which I think is kind of unrealistic. That to me is kind of the mark to judge Jason Tatum is finals performance. Next time the Celtics get to the finals, and there's no reason to believe they can't get to another one in the next 1 or 2 years, that I need to see Jason Tatum with a big-time performance at the highest stage of the NBA. If he does that, can't say anything about it at that point. Jason Tatum, the 5th best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 4, did you actually think he was going to fall that low on my list? His name is Wardell Stephen Curry II. Steph Curry, 4th best player in the National Basketball Association. Here's why. So I have heard rumors and speculation and discussion you know, Steph Curry. Got to tell you, declining basketball player. Not his greatest year in the 2023-24 NBA season. If a down year for Steph Curry includes, I don't know, averaging 26 points per game, leading the NBA by a mile in three-pointers made, and just so happening to win the Clutch Player of the Year award, if that's a down year, man's about to bring hell upon the NBA the upcoming next season, proving he can do what he does with that splash, brother. You can say the Golden State Warriors only missed the playoffs, but you can also consider the fact that because of Klay's struggles, because of Draymond's inability to keep his hands to himself when it comes to punching people, Yusuf Nurkic in particular, when it comes to the Warriors up until, crossing my fingers, until this season, hopefully, not putting a true all-star caliber dude next to him for the first time in, I don't know, about 5 years, he was still able to put them in position to win 46 games in a stacked Western Conference, if not for Steph Curry. Again, understand how impressive that is for Steph Curry. To be the 10th seed in the Western Conference, his team ends up missing the playoffs entirely, and he gets Clutch Player of the Year because his clutch stats were absurd over the course of the season when it comes to field goal percentage, the points scored in the clutch, again, all across the board, three-pointers made in the clutch, field goal makes the clutch, the whole bit. This is a dude who, when you need him most, the whole Steph Curry's a clutch, it's nonsense, it's not based. In fact, Steph Curry, I'm telling you, this reminds me of LeBron James after the 2018-19 season. People talking about, oh, LeBron's not the same. And then he goes berserk in the next year, almost wins league MVP, and the Lakers win the title. I'm not saying the Warriors are going to win the title next season. I think Steph Curry's, I'm going to give him an outside shot to be an MVP candidate next season. I think he's going to have 6 months in between the end of the regular season and the start of next year. That dude is coming for everybody's head, especially after all the disrespect from Gilbert Arenas, Nick Young, and others. Steph Curry, babyface assassin himself, the fourth best player in the National Basketball Association. And then now we go in the top three. To me, the clear and obvious three best players in the NBA. At number 3, the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis, the third best player in the National Basketball Association. Here is why. So, in what was certainly a tumultuous year for the Milwaukee Bucks when it came to injuries, coaching changes, weird fits with Giannis and Dame, some age issues with the roster, Giannis casually dropped 30, 11, and 6 on 61% from the field. He just so happened to be one of the best defensive players in the league once again as well. So, again, I understand Milwaukee, obviously, since winning that championship, it's been a very odd last 3 years. Bounced in round 2, but Chris Middleton wasn't there. Bounced in round 1. Gentlemen swept in round 1 by the 8-seed Heat, in which Giannis was terrible in the fourth quarters of games 4 and 5. And then this year, Giannis didn't get to suit up at all for the playoffs because he got hurt in a game against Boston toward the end of the regular season. I don't know what to make of the Bucks next year. I don't believe they're a championship contender, even as great as Giannis to me clearly is on both ends of the floor, and is, I said it multiple times, I will say it again, the most dominant player in the NBA within 5 feet of the basket since the great Shaquille O'Neal. This guy's absolutely insane. Greek freak is pretty indicative of what he does in the basketball floor every single night. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 30, 11, and 6 on 61% from shooting. Not bad in what was a down year for his team. That goes to show you the greatness of this dude. Let's not forget, by the way, he had 50 points in a closeout game in the NBA Finals. Just saying. Giannis, the third best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 2, a guy who led his team to the first NBA Finals they've been to since 2011. It is Luka. Legend, Luka Doncic is the second best player in the National Basketball Association, and here is why. So Luka is as transformative an offensive talent as we've seen. This is a guy who's, in every sense of the word, a child prodigy. He was playing against professionals at 16 years old overseas. Obviously, this Slovenian talent, it just casually led the NBA in scoring, average about 34 points per game, 9 rebounds, round up, say 10 assists on 48% shooting from the field. I have criticized Luka and the Mavs for their over-reliance on his ISO game and his ability, as great as he is, to get his own shot whenever he wants, because it doesn't benefit the guys around him, and therefore the Mavs don't get the most out of what they have collectively. I think they will change that with the addition of Klay Thompson, because they'll have to get the most out of Klay, who can be a key figure for them. But what this guy did, and what this guy consistently does in the postseason, his numbers when facing elimination are off the charts. His numbers after a loss in the postseason are off the charts. This is a guy who led as tough of a playoff run as we've seen without winning the championship throughout the NBA playoffs. Beats the Clippers. They were falling apart, whatever. Leads the Dallas Mavericks to win over the number 1 seed, numero uno seed, Oklahoma City Thunder, and outplays Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that series, and leads a gentleman's sweep in the Western Conference Finals of the Timberwolves, who had just were fresh off a sweep of Kevin Durant and taking out the champs, the Denver Nuggets, in 7 games, winning Game 7 in Denver. So this guy is, and again, I understand he did not have a bad series against Boston. He had an underwhelming series, not up to par series against the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. But this guy, especially if he does adjust to what the new pieces Dallas has put around him with, obviously with Kyrie Irving, Dallas will be very dangerous coming into next season. And Luka, to me, no lower than the second best player in the National Basketball Association. That leaves the obvious number 1. I shouldn't say the obvious. It's close. Between those three, it's close. My opinion, the best player right now in the NBA is Nikola Jokic. Jokic is the best player in the NBA, and here's why. So this is a guy in Nikola Jokic. If I can pull up the stats here on my notes. Here we go. Nikola Jokic is a guy who won league MVP 3 times over the last 4 years. A few individuals in the history of the league have accomplished such a feat. Averaged 26, 12, and 9, 58% shooting from the field, and about 36% from three-point range. This is about as an offensive cheat code defined if you could define a center as an offensive cheat code that isn't dunking on your head like Shaq or sky hooking over your head like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or is just physically dominant like Wilt was back in the day, that's your guy. This dude is. And listen, I was a Jokic doubter years ago, but after he led one of the most impressive individual statistical runs to the winning the finals last year for Denver and doing what he's been able to do in the regular season the last few years, the guy is insane. And people are going to, rightfully, by the way, because we do this with our superstars, as we should, hold them to account for Denver losing to the Minnesota Timberwolves with minimal playoff experience with the Nuggets being the NBA champions. For what it's worth, and I understand Jokic was not amazing and did lead a team that blew a 20-point lead in a Game 7 at home. That did happen. But in that series, he averaged 29, 11, and 8. Again, that also happened. And for the record, Denver probably gets taken out in 5 games if Jokic doesn't go insane between Games 3 and Games 5. He was great in Game 7, as was Jamal Murray. The problem was no one else for the Denver Nuggets decided to show up to that party. I think this is a guy who can do anything he wants, can probe the game, has an insanely high basketball IQ. Ever heard of a point center? Well, that's essentially what Nikola Jokic is. Nikola Jokic, the best player, I still believe, a year after I said he was, after that 2023 finals, I still maintain that today, the best player in the NBA. Before we get to our comments, let's go back over my list for those that may have just joined. Bryson's best 10 players in the NBA from 10 to 1. We will do it from top to bottom. From bottom to top. Number 10, Kevin Durant. Number 9, Anthony Edwards. Number 8, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 7, Joel Embiid. Number 6, LeBron James. Number 5, Jason Tatum. Number 4, Steph Curry. Number 3, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 2, Luka Doncic. Number 1, Nikola Jokic. Check the comments here. Let's see. Jeff put up his list. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, so he's got Giannis number 1, Luka, Jokic. Oh, Jokic 3. Interesting. Embiid, SGA, Ant. Oh, wait. SGA, Ant, Steph, LeBron, AD, Brunson. Tatum's not a top 10 guy, Jeff? Come on. And he disagrees with me here. He says he's not number 5. Dude's not even the best player of his own team. That's where we just have a fundamental disagreement, because as great as Jaylen Brown is, as great of a finals as he had, again, I would have voted Jaylen Brown finals MVP for the record. That said, statistically, you can make the case Tatum was MVP. Again, I think the voters got it right in voting Brown. But I think the voting results were indicative of the type of series that it was, in the fact that Brown got 7 votes and Tatum got 4 for NBA Finals Most Valuable Player. Again, the Celtics certainly do not reach the 2022 Finals without Tatum's brilliance against Milwaukee and against Miami. And again, to me, the knock on Tatum that I still have, I got to see you perform big in the finals. Outside that, I have no questions. I've seen you perform big when they're back against the wall against Philly, against Milwaukee, against Miami. I just didn't see you do it against Golden State in 2022, which, for the record, most don't. Against the Prime Warriors dynasty, that's not the reality. So I think, again, for him, better shot selection, and he's gonna get that as time goes on, especially as he becomes an older player, a smarter player, continues to go through more and more playoff runs, and he's going to continue to sort of evolve and adapt and adjust to whatever defenses throw at him, and which he did to a certain degree, and when you look at his assist numbers in the finals, but efficiency is going to be key for him because he's one of the most inefficient players in finals history. If you look at the numbers, I talked about that at length in the finals, but I understand folks may disagree with me having him at 5. But I love Brunson. Brunson was my first guy out. I have Brunson at 11, Anthony Davis 12. But I don't know. I don't know what case you can make. Kevin Durant's above. Was Kevin Durant in your 10? Kevin Durant was not in Jeff's 10. Interesting. Okay. Well, listen, I had him right at number 10, so it was close for me too. But like when I hear, Embiid's better than Tatum. Okay. He's better in the regular season, and in the postseason, the guy shrinks. He goes from being 7'2" to 5'2". He does. That sounds harsh, but the guy is shot 20% in the fourth quarter against the Knicks in that series. What do you want me to do? That did, again, as I say in the show, that did happen. Speaking of the Celtics, and my guy Tim Barnard's live right now, so I'm gonna wrap this show up and get out of here because I want to see Tim and Mike Guido on their show tonight at Boston Sports Summit. The Celtics, and this broke on Monday, I believe, are going to, the Celtics ownership, they're going to sell the team. And a lot of Celtics fans, Tim Barnard included here on the Grid Network, is like panicking, like, please God, don't let Fenway Sports Group buy the Celtics, because they obviously own the Red Sox and they have not run the Red Sox into the ground to the level that some Boston fans say. That said, they've been really cheap in free agency. And by the way, they decided to trade Mookie Betts in his prime to the Dodgers and got Alex Verdugo in return. I'm just saying. Here's why I think Boston is deciding to sell the team. And I think this is really, it's slick. It is classic billionaire activity. And I kind of get it. Because if you look at what the Boston Celtics are going to have to deal with for the next, I should say deal with, it's not the worst problem in the world to have, but it is still a something they're going to have to combat in the next few years. Is that good old second apron, which I hate because I hate the CBA, but that's the reality of where we're at. Drew Holiday, his contract is 4 years, $135 million. Jason Tatum, just the other day, 5 years, $314 million, richest contract in NBA history. Jaylen Brown, 5 years, $304 million. And as the cherry on top, Derek White, 4 years, $126 million. That's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to combat when it comes to the second apron coming up for the Boston Celtics. And I think this ownership group is essentially saying, hey, in our time owning this team, we got a title in 2008, finals appearances in 2010 and 2022. We get another title in 2024. Let's get another ring before we get up on out of here. And then the new ownership, by the way, we're going to get, what are the Celtics going to sell for? I mean, it's the Boston Celtics we're talking about. $7-8 billion? About that? What did the Suns sell for? I'm gonna look that up. What did the Phoenix Suns sell for last offseason? I'm actually curious. I'm gonna type this into my computer, into the old Google search engine. What did the Phoenix Suns sell for? What do we got? $4 billion. So that's about what I thought. So I could see Boston selling for $6-7 billion. I say it like it's like $6-7. It's a lot of money to buy an NBA team if that hasn't been apparent for a while. But I think the Celtics ownership's like, hey, we got we got 2 titles. By the time we leave, we may get another next year, go back to back. And then the combating the second apron, that's the new ownership's problem. And by the way, we will come with billions of dollars in our pockets. That, my friends, is capitalism at its finest. Kudos to the Celtics ownership, man. Kudos to them. That is business right there. That's big time. Man. Jeff. Brown is the leader of the team, better defender, and the closer for the team. He also scores almost as many points, is a lot stronger, more physical. Also, the awards now with finals and Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Well, first of all, Tatum also has an Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He's stronger, but he does not get a shot as easily as Jason Tatum. We understand he's improved his left hand as time has gone on, and he was constantly during the finals, showing America his left hand, basically saying, "Hey, I do have a left hand," but that has been a hole in his game, and Brown can be a lot more inefficient shooting from the field, not in the finals, but in general, than Jason Tatum could be. He absolutely is a better defender than Jason Tatum. But again, I understand your breakdown of that. And Brown, by the way, I think himself is undeniably a top 15 player in the NBA. I have a hard time putting him below. Let's see. I put Brunson 11, AD 12. Okay, Booker's got to be in there somewhere. Dame. I'd probably put Brown over Booker, to be honest with you. Right now, I'd probably put Jaylen Brown over Devin Booker because he's more impactful on the defensive end of the floor, even though he's not as natural of a scorer as D-Book. I don't know. I have to put in my list, as in terms of after my top 10. But I do have because Brunson and AD were considered for the top 10. I decided to put Brunson just outside at 11 and then Anthony Davis at number 12. But hey, everybody's list is going to look different. That's where I got mine. And again, to the Boston Celtics, your NBA champions and ownership group. I don't have a hat on right now, but hats off to y'all, man. Hats off to y'all. That is business right there. With that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to go catch Carving Up Live on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. And of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We are on the road on the path to hopefully, it's a long one, we're hopefully getting to 5,000 subscribers. We just surpassed 1,000 about a month ago, 2 months ago. So on the road again. 2,000 is not the goal or the next big goal. It's 5K. And then it'll be 10K, and then I guess 50K, 100K, and then 1 million. Like it's the natural progression we hope to be able to put together on this show. So if you have subscribed, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. Everybody who's involved with the show appreciates it, if I can speak English today. Be sure to please tell your friends about it, your family about it. Please tell everybody about it, except for your sleeping cat. My cat actually, again, about 45 minutes ago, gave like a death stare into me through the door. I don't know what he meant by that. Nealon, I love you, buddy. You're my guy. But that was, I don't know what that was about. Nealon might have disagreed with the take I had, which, given that he's named after Neyland Stadium, I wasn't talking about the Vols. Would I ever talk bad about the Tennessee Vols? The fans, maybe, but the program, certainly not, given what they've been doing. And by the way, if you have not subscribed, hey, take a couple seconds, hit that bigger subscribe button down there, and boom, you're part of the Carving Up family. Just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast. You can find us at the Grid Network, where we dare to be different. Definitely check out our stuff. As soon as I get done with my show, matter of fact, right now you can. Tune in to Tim Barnard, Boston Sports Summit. Mike Guido's joining him. So we got 2 of the heavy hitters at this network live right now on YouTube and I presume on Twitter. So definitely be sure to check their stuff out. I know I will be. And check out our other awesome content on the Grid Network as well. My man EJ Savage, Boys in the Zone, did a great show last night as well. Shout out to EJ. Another Celtics fan, by the way. So he's happy about what happened last month. But at any rate, that is just about it. Please stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. It doesn't matter where you lean, right, left, center. It's an issue that impacts every single one of us as Americans each and every day. And no matter what some people on one side of the aisle tell you, if they tell you, oh, it's not a problem, or folks on the other side of the aisle telling you, oh, there's only one solution to the problem. Both are BS. It's a massive problem that's going to require a number of nuanced solutions to fixing it. We got to do what we got to do, especially this being election year. And for the love of God, can our 2 candidates, can our 2 parties in particular at least acknowledge this thing going into election cycle and not talk about it when it's politically beneficial? That'd be greatly appreciated. All right. I'll see you on Friday. Is Laurie Markkinen a Warrior by then? Maybe. I hope so. If we don't if we get Markkinen and we don't have to give up Jonathan Kuminga, dare I say, the Golden State Warriors might be back in business. And you know what business I'm talking about? That one that involves that big trophy that they give out in June. I'm just saying. All right, see you then on Friday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And please don't be done with your fireworks. Please. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. And be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.